finding food to eat and a place to live. That's not, I don't have anything to eat because I overslept and I couldn't get to the food pantry today. Okay. That's not, I don't have a place to live because for 18 months, I spent my money on something else and didn't pay my landlord. Now he's getting ready to boot me because the government may maybe be removing the mandate that says the landlord can't kick a guy out for not paying his rent. But our poor in this country do just fine. Once upon a time, Elton John had a song that said, times are crazy now, the poor get fat. It's absolutely true. Our Gini coefficient is not good, but our poor have a much better life than many, many people in some countries that are middle class, even rich. Now, why is that Gini coefficient not a big deal? Why is it important to look at the lifestyle we have and the opportunity we have in this country, okay? And it has to do with economies of scale. And I'm going to talk about economies of scale in today's podcast, on today's essay. Well, you may think to yourself, okay, two people are saying two different things. Okay, Strong, you're going to bore me. I know what economies of scale are, so stop talking down to me. Others are going to say, economies of scale? Are you talking Latin? Okay, well, first, before we do anything, let's talk a little bit about what are economies of scale. Well, let's talk about, and it's something that businesses use, the big boys, the fat cats, the captains of industry. One example that I read about in the Wall Street Journal had to do with a company called the Custom Rubber Corporation. They're in Cleveland, Ohio. And what does the Custom Rubber Corporation make? Think about it. That's right. Custom rubber parts. Duh. And it's a very boring thing. They make dog chew toys. They make fittings for cars. They make, if you got a piece of something that you need to have custom made that you can't just buy off the shelf, you talk to them, they design it, they mold it, they manufacture it for you. Okay. So they're your quintessential manufacturing shop. They were having trouble to find workers. In fact, everybody's having trouble to find workers, especially manufacturing, and they're a manufacturing company. Now, here's what they did. They said, okay, we got to get people in here. We do not have bodies to make our product. So to attract people, they raised the salary of everybody, including new hires. They gave everybody in that place a $4.55 an hour raise. So now the average guy who was a machine operator, which was the number one job at that company, make $18.75 an hour, $19 an hour if you want to work second shift and make a little bit of a premium. So you think to yourself, okay, so we raised everybody's pay $4.55 and then lost money, right? Not at all. Historically, in a good year, profits at Custom Rubber Corporation were about 3%. Now their profits are about 5 to 6%. Okay. That's a huge increase in your margin. And also this company has profit sharing. Last quarter, they wrote everybody in that company a check for $355, a profit sharing check. They do that every quarter. That's the biggest profit sharing check they've written since 2012. Now, why? If they gave everybody a raise, if the boss is writing a bigger check to everybody, how did they do better? Economies of scale. I'm going to give you a quick definition of economies of scale. So those of you who don't know what I'm talking about, I'll give you a quick definition. For those of you that do, please bear with me. So what are economies of scale? Economies of scale are basically cost advantages reaped by companies when production becomes more efficient. Now, companies can achieve economies of scale by increasing production and lowering costs. Now, when this happens because costs are spread over a larger number of goods, and costs can be both fixed and variable. Now, the size of a business generally matters when it comes to economics of scale. The larger the business, the more the cost savings. Economies of scale are also an important concept for any business in any industry, and it represents the cost saving and competitive advantages larger businesses often have over smaller ones. Many consumers don't understand why a small business charges more per product sold by a larger company. It's because the cost per unit depends much on what the company produces, on how many they produce. In fact, larger companies can produce more by spreading the cost of production over a larger amount of goods. And an industry may also be able to dictate the cost of a product if there are a number of different companies producing similar goods within the industry. Now, there's two types of economies of scale, internal and external. I mentioned before, there's two different types of economies of scale. Internal economies are those within the company. External ones are based on external factors. Internal economies of scale happen when a company cuts costs internally, so they're unique to that particular firm. And this could be just the sheer size of the company or decisions the firm's management makes. Larger companies can achieve better internal economies of scale, often because they lower their costs and they raise their production levels, because they can go ahead and buy resources in bulk, special technology, access to more capital, they can patent a product, etc. That's what Cleveland Rubber Corporation did. The external economies of scale, on the other hand, are achieved because external factors are factors that affect the entire industry. And nobody controls that cost on their own. In other words, if you're a company that makes wagon wheels, you can't sell more because the demand for that is just not there anymore. But the demand is there for rubber parts, hence the story of Custom Rubber Corporation. Micromanaging, hyper-local manufacturing, additive manufacturing like 3D printing, they can both lower setup and production costs, and small businesses can take advantage of this. Now, global trade, logistics have contributed to lower costs regardless of the size of an individual plant. Now, the average cost of tradable goods has been steadily falling in industrial companies since about 1995. And again, that's because they take advantage of economies of scale. Okay, there's the definition. So I'm sorry if I bored you. But if you don't know what we're talking about, you can't follow the podcast, okay? Now, basically, the Reader's Digest version of what I just said, if you reduce your costs and increase your income, you do better, okay? That's just how it works. And you can go ahead and apply those to yourself. How? Well, again, basically, forget about everything I just read, but basically the Reader's Digest version again is basically if you reduce costs and increased income, you do better. Now, for a person, you have to look at gross income versus net income. You can't say, okay, I make $20 an hour, so I'm going to bring home $41,000 a year. Doesn't work that way because you have other expenses. You bring home the net income, not the gross income. And for the average Joe, especially the average person working an hourly job, the best way to increase your income? Overtime. Suddenly you get paid time and a half. And the old story about, well, I'm not going to work overtime because they take more out in taxes if I work overtime than if I don't. That's not true at all. That's not true at all. Now, they may take more taxes out of your check for the little bit that you do work overtime, but not overall. In other words, if $40,000 a year is taxed at one level and everything over that is taxed at another level, your first $40,000 is still taxed at level A. The next money you make is taxed at level B, but it all doesn't get taxed at level B. That's just how it works, okay? So the best way to increase your income, if you can, work overtime. It's easy, okay? And again, don't get gross income mixed up with net income. Net income, which is really what matters, because that's the money that you put in your hot little hand and spend. That's net income. Net income is basically gross income less expenses, like taxes, like to and from work in a car, clothes if you have to. That's net income. Let me give you an example of net income versus gross income and how the amount of pay that you get doesn't affect it as much as you might think. We have a nice family, okay? And mom works at a job that pays $15 an hour, okay? After taxes, a missed day here and there, that's $2,600 a month. But after, taxes, a missed day every now and then, because nobody works every day. You miss a few days a year. It's about $2,000 a month, okay? $15 an hour, $2,000 a month. That nice little couple has daycare, has a child, so they have to pay for daycare. Daycare is about $1,400 a month, okay? And she lives 15 miles from work, so she drives 30 miles a day. So her expenses, because she works, is $1,400 a month. $330 a month is what she uses in travel to and from work. 15 miles there, 50 miles back, times 30. That's $1,700 in expenses. So you take the $2,000 she earns minus $1,700, and while her gross income is $2,000, her net income is $270. See the difference? Now, here's the other thing. Let's say that same family, that same individual, that same lady married with a kid decides to work from home, take a night job, and do that from home, okay? So that dad can watch baby while mom is working. But let's say she can only make $10 an hour at that job. You think, that's a 50% cut in pay, Strong. Why would she ever take that? Well, friends, it's not a 50% cut in pay. It's a 50% reduction in gross income. But look at her expenses. $10 an hour less taxes is about $1,300.30 a month. Okay. She doesn't drive to and from work because she works from home, and she's not paying daycare because she works nights and dad watches baby. Okay. So the $1,330 that mom makes, making $10 an hour, is $1,060 more than the mom making $15 an hour, but driving to work and paying for daycare. That's a lot, folks. That's a whole lot. $1,660 is a lot more than $270. That's $12,000 a year. That's over $12,000 a year. So you see how it works? Don't worry about gross income, worry about net income. Because if you cut your expenses, even if you cut your income, your gross income, your net income can be better. You've now used economies of scale. I'll give you a perfect example. I'll use me as a perfect example. About 20 years ago, I had been in a job about 23 years, and I needed a change. I wanted to change careers. I wanted to sell instead of manage people, okay? And my current employer didn't offer that opportunity, but I found one that did, okay? Now, here was the difference between the job that I was at and the job that I was going to. The job that I was going to paid considerably less to start. But it was a sales job, and it was a job that if you worked hard, you get more customers, you sell more. The more you sell, the more you earn. And I was confident that I could do that, but it was going to take at least a year to do it, okay? So what I did is I did the math, and I thought, okay, this current job is 32 miles away from work. It takes me about an hour to get there. The new job, 10 minutes from work. Or less. The old job, I had to write a pretty big check for insurance for the family. The new job, company paid all the insurance. So after I took out of the equation the extra cost of insurance and the extra cost of driving to and from, forget about saving about 4 hours a week of my time. It was almost a wash. Still made a little bit less at the new company, but that was okay, because I knew I'd be able to build sales, make more money over time, and I did. So I took a job that paid considerably less, but because of economies of scale, my reduced expenses, insurance, and car costs, the net income was about the same. See how that works? And that's coming from me, folks. I'm not making that up. You hear the term from a lot of people, I'm on a fixed income. People on disability, on Social Security, on retirement, on pension. I'm on a fixed income. Well, the dirty little secret is most jobs, many jobs, you're on a fixed income too.